And welcome everyone to our 2:30 land use meeting. If everyone would stand and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Attorney Ingalls, do we have certification of the agenda for today's meeting?
We do, Mr. Chair. You have 5 items under item 3 on your agenda. Item A was continued after being properly noticed for July 13th. Item B required published, posted, and mailed notice. That was accomplished on June 24th, June 26th, and June 17th, respectively. Item C required published and posted notice, which was June 24th and June 25th. Item D had published notice, posted notice, and mailed notice, June 24th, June 28th, and June 14th, respectively. And finally, item 3E required published notice, which was accomplished July 22nd, 2021. With that, you have proper notice and jurisdiction on all 5 items.
Thank you, Attorney Ingalls. Do we have any commissioner disclosures for any items on this agenda?
I have none, thank you.
No, sir.
And I have none either. And with that, we will move into land use meeting items. And today we have no items in land use. And with that, we will move into public hearing. Item 3A, resolution adopting the 2021-2025 consolidated plan. Tina Dill presenting for staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tina Dill with Community Development. The request before you today is to approve the resolution authorizing staff to submit the 2021 through 2025 consolidated plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, is authorized under Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. The Cdbg program is one of several grant programs administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Primary objectives of the program is to develop viable urban communities by applying annual grant funds toward community development activities. Viable communities are achieved by helping to create decent housing, suitable living environments, and expanded economic opportunities. CDBG funding can be used for a wide range of activities. While it's a flexible funding source, the funds must primarily be used to benefit low to moderate income individuals, households, and neighborhoods. Low income is defined as a person or family earning no more than 80% of the area median income, or AMI. Funds are allocated to organizations who meet eligibility requirements and address one of the local priorities established in the CON plan. Use of the CDBG funding is locally driven and administered through the Consolidated Plan, or the CON plan, a 5-year planning document that's required by HUD to receive an annual CDBG allocation. The CON plan is developed based on community engagement, local research, and census data. It describes community needs and resources, sets priorities, identifies proposed activities for 2021, and will help determine activities to fund in the coming years. The CON plan includes an annual action plan, which is submitted to HUD every year during the 5-year CON plan cycle. The action plan serves as the annual application for CDBG funds and describes the specific planned uses for the funds and how the program requirements will be met. HUD requires grantees to engage the community and make every effort to reach out to residents. Their feedback, as well as the data collected, helps assess the needs of vulnerable residents that are eligible for CDBG programs. The data was used to assess current gaps in services and inform the spending priorities proposed to address the needs of income-eligible residents. Staff launched an online survey for the community and for service providers, which resulted in collecting a total of 634 surveys. 2 focus groups were held with 60 people in attendance, and 11 phone interviews were conducted. A 30-day comment period began on May 14th, allowing residents the opportunity to review the draft con plan and make their comments. The public hearing today concludes the public engagement process, giving residents an opportunity to weigh in on the CDBG program and the draft con plan. To date, staff has received no adverse comments on the plan or the funding opportunities. The priorities proposed to you today are affordable housing, public services, and public improvements, which includes public facilities. Examples of affordable housing can include land acquisition, rehabilitation, and down payment assistance. Public services may include health care, including mental health care, and services for seniors, disabled adults, and youth. Public services also help to prevent homelessness and can be used to avert a utility shut-off or an eviction. Public improvements upgrade streets, sidewalks, and water and sewer infrastructure. Public facilities are intended to expand capacity of nonprofit organizations, neighborhood centers, and homeless facilities. HUD informed the county that $711,436 will be awarded upon approval of the con plan. Douglas County awards the individual allocations to local partners to provide services and complete projects without growing government. All 8 of the applications received addressed a local proposed priority. The county uses a competitive grant application process open to all organizations who successfully manage programs and activities for income-eligible residents. The applications were evaluated with a scoring rubric, and those with the highest scores were recommended for funding. The applicants, their proposals, and funding amounts that staff is recommending to you today are as follows. The Douglas County Housing Partnership applied to replace hot water heaters and heating units at Lincoln Point Lofts, which is an apartment complex for families with incomes no higher than 60% of the AMI. An award of $344,084 in funding is recommended. Manna Resource Center applied for a supportive services program to help clients meet short-term self-sufficiency goals, such as job readiness. An award of $30,000 is recommended. Manna Resource Center also applied for an emergency response program to assist families at risk of homelessness with housing and utilities. The program provides clients with access to case management to identify and further their goals towards self-sufficiency. Manna intends to use these funds for residents in both programs who did not qualify for assistance through the CARES Act. An award of $75,000 is recommended for Manna. The Crisis Center applied for shelter improvements to update their geothermal system. An award of $28,000 is recommended. The Sedalia Water and Sanitation District applied for water system improvements to install electronic water meters to increase efficiencies and reduce maintenance costs. An award of $94,134 is recommended for the district. Tall Tales Ranch is in the process of raising funds to build 28 housing units for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. They applied for funding for a portion of the project pre-construction costs. An award of $70,111 is recommended for Tall Tales Ranch. HUD allows 20% of the annual allocation to be retained for planning purposes and to administer the program. Staff recommends holding 10% back, or $70,110, for the administration of CDBG. If these funds are not fully utilized, they can be repurposed and reallocated through the competitive application program in future years. HUD requires all funding recipients to certify that they will affirmatively further fair housing, or AFFH. This is a condition of accepting CDBG funds. These requirements are included in the Civil Rights Act of 1968. The AFFH regulations adopted in 2015 changed the reporting and the implementation requirements of that particular civil rights, of that particular Fair Housing Act. The regulations, however, were unduly burdensome and impacted the county's local control and caused the county to opt out of the program at that time. Up until then, the county successfully met AFFH requirements by focusing on fair housing education and ensuring access to services. The 2015 regulations governing AFFH were rescinded in 2018, and as a result, the county chose to cautiously re-engage in the CDBG program. At the present time, Douglas County has complete discretion on how to implement AFFH efforts. No specific report is required. Staff will strive to continue these successful efforts, which has led HUD to consider Douglas County a model community. In January, President Biden announced that his administration would be re-examining recent regulatory actions related to fair housing regulations. The content and the time frame are unknown, and the question of how jurisdictions will accomplish this requirement has yet to be answered. Should the CON plan be approved and the county determine to accept CDBG funds, HUD's activities regarding AFFH regulations will be closely monitored. It's staff's recommendation to you today that the Board of County Commissioners approve the resolution authorizing staff to submit the 2021 through 2025 Consolidated Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That concludes my presentation for you today. Our staff is available to answer any questions you may have, and the organizations recommended for funding are here with us today and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Tina, for that presentation. Any questions for Tina?
I have none, thank you.
Commissioner Teal?
Tina, I wonder if you could take us through a little bit of detail here pertaining to the AFFH changes that were made. And I wonder if you can give us an idea of how did the definition of what it means to be affirmatively furthering fair housing change between 2015 and then the rewrite in 2018, and where we believe the interim ruling is going at this stage of the game?
It is very difficult to determine how the interim rule will affect the end result of the rules that we expect to be coming. The changes were, in one way, semantics, and they reflect the values of the administration currently and the administration previously. So I believe that's the main difference.
So it's fair to say that the current interim rule that redefines affirmatively furthering fair housing is closer. Would it be appropriate to say identical to the 2015 AFFH definition as provided?
The definition is exactly the same. You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. So I have a lot of questions on this, and I appreciate the board continuing this item to today. Certainly for our last scheduled meeting on this item, I was in Washington, D.C. and heard directly from a variety of leaders at the federal government about this and other policies. That was the National Association of County Commissioners, so all the commissioners throughout the country gathering in Washington to have conversations on these critical subjects. I will say we were greeted by Kamala Harris and Secretary of HUD, Marcia Fudge, who's a former congresswoman from Ohio, that shared with us a very interesting and different perspective than what we had seen in the previous administration. And the comment I heard frequently from Marcia Fudge was, "It's a new day at HUD." So I'm deeply concerned that the perspective and the strings associated with CDBG may be returning. And I guess what my question for you would be is on timing and procedure. So I guess the first question would be, are we currently under the previous administration's rules or the new administration's rules?
We're currently under the administration's rules from previous years.
Okay.
Under Trump.
Okay. And so for just clarity for those that may be listening in and those in our gallery with us today, and thank you all for taking the time to spend a little of your afternoon with us. Today's vote is about the consolidated plan, but my understanding from staff is that the actual vote on the contract, were it to go forward, would be in October. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So is it likely that we will receive new information or any information from the federal government about any rule changes between now and October?
I spoke with HUD headquarters yesterday to ask that very question because I felt like that was an important decision as hinging on that. They do not know yet when they will be issuing a proposed rule for AFFH.
Okay. Is it possible that we will get new information between now and October?
It's possible.
Yeah. Well, as one commissioner, I think we need to turn the spigot of free government handouts off and hopefully allow citizens to return to productive employment. But I also wrestle with the fact that these are the tax dollars of our citizens that will be spent in other communities if we don't allocate those to those that we serve here in Douglas County. So I'll continue to wrestle with that, but look forward to discussion today. Any other questions or discussion with staff? Okay, with that, sorry, Commissioner?
Yeah, if I could just add, thank you for those questions and that clarification, that today we are voting on the plan. And, you talk about turning off the spigot of free money and using the marketplace. I'm not aware of any marketplace that provides housing for people at 60% AMI to keep them off the street and keep them from being homeless, which is an even larger problem. So those are the things that I wrestle with as well. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal.
Actually, I apologize, Chair. I do have a further question for Tina. Tina, so today our decision is to approve the consolidated plan. Are there any certifications that will be required today in order for us to submit the consolidated plan?
Yes, the chair of the board would have to sign the certifications that are required by HUD. One of those certifications is that the county will affirmatively further fair housing. And it also includes other aspects of HUD's requirements. So it is to call us to task and confirm that we understand that we follow the federal regulations that are associated with this grant.
So with the certification to affirmatively further fair housing, we are in an interim rule period. Are we agreeing to, are we certifying to be in agreement with the interim rule or with the rule from 2018 under the prior administration?
We're just certifying to further fair housing. The regulations are to come yet.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. With that, I will open it up for any citizen comment on this item. Is there any citizen comment on this particular item on our agenda? Yes. If you want to just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
And just for clarification for everyone that has taken the time to attend today, we have a 3-minute limit on public comment to ensure everybody has an opportunity to speak. And then we'll also turn it online so that folks who have called in can also have an opportunity to speak.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Name and address. Amy McCandless. My address is 4642 South Zenobia Street in Denver. I'm Amy McCandless, Development Director with the Crisis Center. We serve adults and children impacted by domestic violence in this community. We appreciate your consideration of this request today. We have historically received CDBG funding for infrastructure and improvements to help offset our general operating costs. Things like upgraded windows for our building in 2012 and an upgraded telephone system in 2015. In 2016, we upgraded our emergency shelter and administration building and needed to add an elevator for ADA compliance. This was the year the county opted out of CDBG funding, forcing the Crisis Center and other agencies serving vulnerable populations to find other sources of revenue. Let me tell you, as a development director, donors prefer to give to direct service programs, not to capital expenditures, which are required for any nonprofit to operate effectively. While we are grateful for the support received by the county as well as the town of Castle Rock and other federal funders, this funding has been unable to keep pace with increased expenses and raising costs of serving those in need. Town of Castle Rock funds have declined over the past 2 years, with last year being cut nearly in half. Funding from local VAIL, the Victim Assistance and Law Enforcement Program, has decreased over the past 2 years, and we recently received notice that our federal funding from VOCA, the Victims of Crime Act, will be cut in 2023 by 40%, which is about a $200,000 cut for the Crisis Center. Your support today is critical. This year, we are grateful for the opportunity to apply for funding specifically to fix one of our 2 pump geothermal systems at our emergency shelter and administration building. Without fixing this pump, we run the risk of losing heat, cooling, and hot water to our building, thereby creating major hardships for our clients and staff. That means no bathrooms, no showers, no kitchen. Please know we are good stewards of our donor dollars. We have been longtime recipients of federal and local government funding, completing required reports on time and demonstrating positive outcomes for the adults and children impacted by domestic violence that we serve, 76% of whom are Douglas County residents. As one client recently said, no one talks about or acknowledges domestic violence in upper socioeconomic demographics, but the impact is just as real, and in some ways, even harder to overcome. The Crisis Center and its supporters helped me tremendously, but more importantly, my son has improved as a result of the resources of the Crisis Center. It is one of the few places my challenges have been understood and supported, because domestic violence usually only ends once someone dies. We appreciate your consideration and encourage you to vote yes on this important request.
Thank you, Ms. McCandless, and thank you for the hard work of the Crisis Center. Greatly appreciate it. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Diane Levsley, the Executive Director of the Douglas County Housing Partnership. Our address is 9350 Heritage Hills Circle in Lone Tree. I see CDBG funds as a tool to better our community. In 2016, I tried to make the point that not accepting CDBG funds was essentially giving away our tax dollars. And I want to say that again today. These are tax dollars of the citizens of Douglas County. They pay them to the federal government, and it's meant to come back to us to make our community a better place. It's my opinion, and the opinion of other Douglas County residents, that we shouldn't be giving these funds away. And true, there are some very vocal citizens that are saying things about AFFH rules that they believe, but I don't believe that they're factually correct. We all have a right to our opinions, but saying our opinions are a fact doesn't make them true. The CDBG program, as you heard from Tina, was put in place in 1974. The program gives local communities a lot of flexibility in choosing how the funds will be used. The Douglas County Housing Partnership has primarily used the funds for down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. There are over 300 families who bought their first home with our help. I think it's really really important that each recipient of these CDBG dollars has the opportunity to determine their community's needs. And as you heard, they support not only housing, but public facilities and economic development activities. Flexible funds are rare, and that's why these funds are so appreciated. Based on things that I've heard at other meetings, and in addition to some emails that have been flying around, there's objection to the requirement to consider and report whether the community is creating barriers to fair housing. Douglas County isn't creating barriers to fair housing, so where is all this fear? Don't be persuaded by this rhetoric of fear. I'm sorry that those who disagree have been disagreeable and threatening. Let's receive the CDBG funds and use them for their intended purpose, which is to better Douglas County for all of its citizens. And thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at any point.
Thank you, Ms. Levsley. Hi, welcome.
Hi, I am Artie Lale, the Programs Manager at the Douglas County Housing Partnership and also a resident of Douglas County. I live at 4483 Juniper Court in Perry Park. And I'm here to say thank you for considering our project at Lincoln Point Lofts. This investment, and it is an investment in Lincoln Point Lofts, is important. Lincoln Point Lofts is a tax credit property, for one. It was built with low-income housing tax credits as part of its finance mixture. The first building was built in 2005, the second building in 2008. There's 133 units in the first building and 88 in the second. And it's located in the Meridian complex. So it's very centralized, and it's a very essential property for a lot of people in this county who are hardworking folks who just need a place to live, to be close to work. The incomes, as mentioned by Tina when she was doing her presentation, are at or below 60% AMI. But what does that mean? Let's put some concrete numbers to that. Well, a family of 4 would be making around $50,000 a year, and a family of 2 would be making around $40,000 a year. So you're talking about a lot of single parents, a lot of 2-parent, single-child households, up-and-comers, millennials, the new Gen Z. You're talking about older folks coming onto fixed incomes. We are not talking about a Section 8 property. We are not talking about public housing. This is workforce housing, and it's essential in our community. And it's difficult to develop such things in our community without public-private partnerships. So we have a small share of ownership in the property, very, very small share, less than 1%. However, our private sector partner, Wishcamper, which is the general partner, they're a for-profit entity. So this is just part of their larger portfolio. And the county's seen other major developers work with us, Shea Properties, for example. So these properties are very essential, and they are part of the free market. But the government, just like it does with TIF or CDOT funds to help other developers do commercial projects, can use these investments to help support the greater economy and the greater workforce. And what happened here is we had a recession due to the pandemic, and the capital reserves that the property had diminished rapidly because they needed those to help pay for other things, including the mortgage on the property. So the property at this moment only has about $23,000 in its capital reserve to contribute to this part of the project. And this is a part, it's only 1/3. There's just not enough CDBG funding that we could ask for. It's $1 million project to upgrade these water heater systems, and they're systems. This isn't like what you have in your home. These are 75-gallon dual-use water heaters. And so this is a major investment into a community that is very well needed and deserved in this county. And so I want to say thank you to the commissioners for considering this project and for taking on the CDBG so that we can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lale. Hello.
Hello, my name is Heather Lauren Quiroga. I'm the Development Director at Tall Tales Ranch. I'm also here to thank you for considering our request for these funds and hope that I can help you understand why it's so very critical for us to receive funding like this. We are a Colorado nonprofit. Sorry, our address is 10821 South Havana Street in Lone Tree. We have a piece of property that's been provided to us by the historic Schweiger Ranch Foundation, directly across from the RTD light rail station at Ridgegate. We provide programming and community, and we are building a mixed-use residential and commercial community on that piece of property in Lone Tree to serve young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities like autism and Down syndrome and traumatic brain injury. And we are a population who, by definition, are low income. These folks, 83% of them are willing and able to do some sort of work, but most can't work full-time. And of that 83%, of people capable and willing to work, there's very little vocational training, very little opportunity for them to have meaningful employment. So what Tall Tales Ranch intends to do is to provide a place where not only the folks, about 32 residents on the property, small compared to the number of lives we plan to improve and touch, will have a place to receive vocational training. We will have a retail coffee shop. We will have a community event barn. We will have opportunities for vocational training that they can take skills elsewhere and find opportunity. And this is absolutely a population experiencing opportunity crisis perpetually. So this is a good thing for Douglas County. This is a great thing to invest in. And the reason I mention the details of the property is what we're asking for in these funds, money to pay for less than a third of the construction document costs. All of our plans are done. We passed our site improvement plan approval with the City of Lone Tree last summer. We're excited to build. I just launched my capital campaign in January. I have over $500,000 in individual contributions already. We're working with corporate sponsorships. This will represent this, if we are awarded this funding, less than 1/3 of what the construction docs will cost. But we need it. We can't do it without a partnership like this. We're grateful for the consideration. We understand the concerns of this committee and hope that you understand that an investment in Tall Tales Ranch is an investment in a population that is so often left out of that diversity equation, and we're all concerned about that these days, right? These folks want to work, we want to train them, we want to give them meaningful employment. It's a great place for Douglas County to put their money. And again, I appreciate your consideration of us.
Thank you, Ms. Quiroga. Thank you for all your work at Tall Tales Ranch. Is there any other citizen comment?
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Commissioners. My name is Katie James. I'm with Folkstead Fazekas Law Firm here in Castle Rock, 18 South Wilcox Street, Castle Rock 80104. I am general legal counsel, and our firm is for Sedalia Water and Sanitation District. I did not do the heavy lifting on this part of the grant writing or the project. Our district engineer definitely did that. But she's out of town this week, and it was really critical to her that she made a statement on behalf of our board because they've worked pretty hard on this project application, so I'm here to basically read it. So this is from our district engineer, Mary Castle, who is also doubling as a grant writer oftentimes for our district. On behalf of Sedalia Water and Sanitation District, Mary would like to say thank you for your continued support, really all the time, of the district, and the possible re-implementation of the Cdbg program. As you're aware, this program has been a lifeline for the district for many years. It's funded several critical projects. The district appreciates the funding opportunities tremendously, but it also recognizes that the fact that they have to become more self-sustainable from other sources as well. Since our last funding through the Cdbg program, the district has applied for many grants as well as taken on a really large effort of preparing a preliminary engineering report that would allow the district to obtain a grant loan package of funding through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. After 3.5 years of research and planning, the district was recently awarded a funding opportunity in the approximate amount of $7.8 million that would allow the district to replace a large portion of its district infrastructure. $3.5 million of those funds are grant funds, while the remaining $4.3 million would be a loan. Currently, the district is working on public outreach with the community to educate them on that possibility and get input, because of course it would have to go to a Tabor vote for us to be able to increase property taxes to take that kind of a loan and be able to accept the project. So that's not yet on the table. I'm not saying that here. I just want you, Mary wants you to know that that a big part of the consideration for the approval from the USDA of the potential funding package is seeing other revenue sources and other contributions to the district. And while the amount of money that might possibly be awarded the district through this program does not sound like the same as 7.8 million, it was a huge favorable piece of being able to be awarded that larger project funding, you know, if we're able to manage to take it. And this is not a small thing as a component of that, in addition to the project at hand with the meter replacement. Certainly we have a large hurdle left of educating the public, and we'll see where that goes. It's important to recognize that piece. Mary says thank you again. She apologizes, she's on vacation, can't be here personally, but we do have our district president here and at least one other board member. I'm not sure how many might be online. And the district does appreciate your continued support.
Thank you, Ms. James. Do we have an additional public comment today? Hello.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Erin White. I'm the Executive Director of Mana Resource Center. I'm also a citizen of Douglas County. I live at 25 East Ag Place in Highlands Ranch. Mana Resource Center exists to break down barriers to poverty, self-sufficiency, and mental health. And we do that through holistic programs, collaboration with the community, and through collaborative support through the programs that we provide to our clients. In doing that, we believe that cycles are broken, families are strengthened, and lives are transformed. We see the CDBG funds as an opportunity for our clients and an opportunity for this community, not to create entitlement programs, but really for people to have opportunities that they don't otherwise have to gain additional services through emergency support if they're on the verge of experiencing homelessness or experiencing homelessness. And I know that that's an issue that this board is seeking to address, more opportunities for those residents experiencing homelessness. Alongside of that emergency support is quality case management that would be provided by our team of coaches to be able to equip our clients with more skills and resources so that they can say that their lives have been transformed. And so, as you've heard from several of the folks that are speaking today, these funds would potentially provide opportunities, not only for those stabilization services that I mentioned for those folks that are in critical need, but also for the folks that are in our workforce, that are living in affordable housing, that are just making ends meet, who potentially have been impacted by the pandemic and are just now coming out and seeking to see what's next, but need that long-term stability. Maybe they are seeking some new skills and would like to know opportunities to be able to access them. And so that's what our supportive services program through these fundings would be able to do. And we just want to say thanks for considering our proposal. Thanks for considering the needs of these vulnerable residents in our community, and would love to answer any questions that you have about our ideas of how to walk alongside these vulnerable residents. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you for all you do with Mana.
Sure.
Any additional public comment today? Yes, sir.
See, my name is Smith Young, and my address is 16474 Creekview Drive, Parker, Colorado. And I don't really have a script here, and I don't represent an organization, but there are a lot of citizens like myself who are opposed to CDBG. And we're not opposed to nonprofits at all. As a matter of fact, I want to take a moment to just refer to a little bit of history. Back in 2015 and 16, say, Abe, you were on the planning committee. Laura was just elected, And it was basically the previous commissioners who voted not to accept CDBG. And as a replacement for that, I essentially came up with an idea, and everybody bought into it, for trying to create something sustainable within Douglas County. So I think it was Doug who did a lot of work working with the Community Foundation, the Douglas County Community Foundation. And at that time, it was a lot of work and they're an umbrella organization for many nonprofits. And he was able, and I would say at a bribe of $100,000 a year, and now we're going into the 4th year of giving him $100,000 to try to replace CDBG. That program has failed, and in my humble opinion, I believe the reason it's failed is because of governance. At no fault to the nonprofits, and we certainly support the nonprofits, it was with the original intent, and the plan was a true partnership between the county and the nonprofit. That didn't occur. We had several meetings with the nonprofit, and we proposed many ideas, but in just a word, they had their own ideas, and they are not enterprising and with new ideas, and it essentially failed. A couple points on things I've heard is on June 10th, Biden introduced another AFFH rule to replace the old rule. It went through the 30-day comment period. That comment period is over, and I believe the new AFFH rule is in effect. If you sign the consent, you're no longer under the legal liability under the legal liability to further fair housing. But once you sign that, there is a legal agreement, and there's lots of issues with regard to that. That was an issue that brought up earlier. The last comment is about the funding, and the money that Castle Rock turned down in 2015, it became clear they could not return the money. Nobody else is going to be taking the money that we are declining. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there any additional public comment today? Yes, ma'am. Welcome. Hi.
My name is Kim Munson. I live at 8173 Sweetwater Road in Lone Tree, Colorado, and I thank you. There are worthy organizations that have made presentations here for the CDBG money, and certainly laud them on their great work. The big question here is what are the strings that are attached if we accept this money? And I testified or made public comments back in 2015 on this as well, so I've done a lot of work to understand this. There's a real assault on single-family zoning throughout America. There's a real assault on the middle class. And I submit to you that we have challenges on affordable housing because of public policy. And I have two pieces that I will submit to add to the record. One is by Randall O'Toole, well, both are by Randall O'Toole, and he is an urban land planning expert and transportation expert. And one of them is the case for single-family neighborhoods, and the other says that cities must end the economic apartheid of growth management. And so as we look at what AFFH would really do, is there would be strings attached where, to my understanding, there could be bureaucrats, government come in and say, we're looking at the mix of the region of your community. And if it doesn't match that mix, then you will need to come in and make investments into properties to bring that up to that particular mix. That's not the proper role of the federal government to come in and do that. And so I would highly recommend that you not take this money. These worthy organizations that are there with a budget like you have, you could probably come up with some money that you could possibly get over to them. But that brings up the other question. Is this the proper role of government? And should government be picking winners and losers? Yes, there are great organizations that have made the case for receiving the money, but there's so many great organizations out there that I don't think that it's really the job of government to be picking winners and losers on that. So just to continue to protect our single-family zoning and our neighborhoods and our communities, I strongly encourage that you not sign up for the CDBG grant money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mutson. Any additional public comment? Troy, do we have any public comment online?
No online comments, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move from public comment back to the board for further discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Layden, and thank you to the people who spoke here, both for and against, and thank you for all the emails that we have received. I think the first thing that we need to clarify is that this is the first step of accepting the plan, and that there will be another hearing in October, is my understanding. Is that yours, Commissioner Layden?
It is.
So for the history of those who are listening, in 2016, I understood that if Douglas County took these community development block grant funds, that we would be actually inviting the federal government to come in and change our zoning. So we did not take that money. I was not a commissioner then, but Douglas County did not take the money. As we have been looking into going back into CDBG, we have asked staff how many governments have turned down CDBG funding in the whole country. There's almost 4,000 counties. I can't even begin to imagine how many cities there are. But staff has told us that we can count on one hand the number of people who have declined to take CDBG funds. It's actually 4. We are one of 4. So over the last years, we have left almost $5 million of our tax dollars on the table that could have been used to help community projects. Now, I think it's a whole nother discussion about what the proper role of government is. But the discussion right now is that the federal government provides funds to communities to invest in their communities and improve them. And it's our tax dollars, it's our citizens' tax dollars, and they can be used to improve the lives of residents so they don't become homeless, so our communities don't become more worse off. If people don't have a place to live and they are homeless, that's not good for our community either. Many of the people who have emailed me are good friends. They have been at my house. We have enjoyed each other's companies for many years. And it breaks my heart to hear them calling me a Democrat, because I want to use tax dollars, their tax dollars, in a way that they are designed to be used. So I'm going to stop there and let my other commissioners speak before I finish this. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
Thank you, Chair. I've been through, in my time in elected office, many meetings like this, and I can't help but, every time I hear from so many residents, I want to start my comments by saying, hi, I'm George Teal. I live at 931 Eaglestone Drive in Castle Rock, Colorado. Because it's always a pleasure for me to hear from our residents and the very valuable organizations within our community. I'm very familiar with the Community Development Block Grant Program. I was on the Castle Rock Council beginning in 2014, and I will tell you, when the redefinition of the affirmatively furthering fair housing was pushed through by HUD in 2015, accompanied by the requirement for a community fair housing assessment, it came as a real surprise to many of us on the Castle Rock Council, the number of people who raised a red flag talking about some of the concerns that we've heard from today of the powers that it would actually give the federal government in our local zoning. It was very surprising to our staff on the town of Castle Rock that suddenly this very benign stream of money that would seemingly come in from the federal government just from the process of raising one's hand and filling out the copious amounts of paperwork was suddenly anything but benign. Suddenly it was the perception of many that it was a form of weaponized federal subsidy. Think of back in the 90s when the federal government required us all to mandate speed limits that didn't exceed 75 miles an hour, mandated 21 as the drinking age, or else you would lose out on federal funding for your roads. Again, a weaponized policy of federal funding. That came as a big surprise, both to our very experienced municipal staff, but nonetheless, very surprising for those of us who were on the Castle Rock Council at the time. So obviously Castle Rock, as an entitlement community, a very recent entitlement community, chose to opt out of the Community Development Block Grant Program, and followed within months by the county for much of the same reasoning that we had already come to the conclusion of in Castle Rock, that this was probably a program that introduced a level of vulnerability to federal control, removing, as we've heard mentioned by a couple of our residents, removing local sovereignty and local control, which I think is something we have always valued here in Colorado, and specifically something we have always valued here in Douglas County. Fast forward to 2018, obviously a whole different administration, very different political views, very different views on public policy. And we did have a rewrite of what it means to be affirmatively furthering fair housing. And at that point in time, and of course, we also saw a drop of the requirement for a community fair housing assessment. That was viewed, I think, by many folks who pay attention to this funding as being very positive, because between 2015 and 2018, of all the many communities that Commissioner Thomas was very correctly pointed out do accept community development block grant monies, none across the United States had actually completed the community fair housing assessment and come to the end of that program. So I thought that was a very wise move by the federal government in the Housing and Urban Development Department to drop those requirements, to revert to a definition of affirmatively furthering fair housing that was consistent with what had been seen since the founding of the program back in the 1970s. Which brought us to this year and brought us to this discussion that actually we're having today. And I feel I need to point out that, we heard from several of the, petitioners, several of the organizations today who would be recipients of this funding per this consolidated plan, and how they would spend it. And I don't think there's anybody here who would question the appropriate nature of that spending. I don't think there's anyone here who would call in the question the value of those organizations. And so I'd like to move beyond with my comments in terms of a discussion of need and a discussion of what funds could be awarded. And I'd ask us to think about it in a little bit bigger of a picture. When we talk about the role of government in America, it's really very simple. There are three roles in government in America that are defined in the United States Constitution, and they've been there for over 200 years. It's to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. And I know that last sentence, people tend to raise a political red flag when one talks of liberty. So that's okay. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to talk about the first two reasons of providing for the common defense and promoting the general welfare. Providing for the common defense here at the local level mostly involves public safety, obviously. I do not recall seeing on our budget prior to my taking office, us budgeting aircraft carriers or ICBMs. So that's not what providing for the common defense means here. But when we talk about promoting the general welfare, I do think there is a role for what the recipients, the would-be recipients of these funds have brought to us. And there is a role there of providing, promoting the general welfare there. But it does go to the question of what is promoting the general welfare here in Douglas County versus not promoting the general welfare here in Douglas County. And I would submit that the purposes behind housing and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the purposes behind the Community Development Block Grant Program, the purposes behind the AFFH really don't apply here. Those of you familiar with the history of Douglas County know that, Douglas County has not been a racist community in the past. We are not the community that is quoted when people talk about the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. We are not the community that practiced the red line zoning that we have seen here in this state. We are primarily a community made up of municipalities that have only arisen since the 1980s in that Highlands Ranch, really Parker. When you look at Sedalia, you look at Castle Rock. Well, when you look at Castle Rock, and I know I'm partial because it is my hometown, but you're looking at a community that actually hosted the members of the African American cowboy movement. They were Castle Rock residents. They lived here. They worked as cowboys around Douglas County. And so I call into question whether these are funds that are ever meant for us here. And one of the reasons that I use as a point of logic is going back to what I talked about earlier in 2015 and what happened in Castle Rock when suddenly the Community Development Block Grant Program became this political red flag, this thing, this crisis in the community. In one administration, federal administration, we saw this become a political hot potato. And I would submit that we saw the policies that underpin the Community Development Block Grant Program be a form of weaponized federal control within our community, within a single administration, after nearly 30 years of existence, after over 30 years of existence. We saw a change in 2018 that actually I was very favorable for. I was very willing to consider going back into the Community Development Block Grant Program. And we're in month 7 of this new administration, and we already have an interim rulemaking that we already heard from our staff who have done extensive research on this topic, already reverts to the AFFH definition that was weaponized in 2015. Again, this is politics that's driving this public policy. For me, I do look at the bigger picture. I do acknowledge the need of the would-be recipients who have come before us today, but I have grave concerns being in an interim rulemaking period with proceeding forward in adopting this consolidated plan and moving forward. And I do appreciate my colleagues' comment that this is the first step. I would urge my colleagues that let this, I acknowledge this is a first step, but let's this be the last step until we see better policy coming from the federal government on this topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. So I think some really deep and thoughtful comments have been shared with all of us today, and I am incredibly proud of this board for taking the time to not only engage with all of our citizens, but certainly the groups that benefit from these funds and thinking thoughtfully about how nonprofits operate for the good of those in our community. You know, when I was in DC, I had about 15 minutes before I had to head to the airport, and I went to the Lincoln Memorial. And not to politicize it, but, you know, it is moving to see the former leader of the Republican Party so focused on equality, and then to stand in the same steps that Martin Luther King stood in 1963 with his I Have a Dream speech. As a person of color myself, I am deeply passionate about equality and fairness and ensuring that in Douglas County that is always the case. I think my board raises very important considerations, and Mr. Young raises the good point that we certainly heard about CDBG and some of the policies when I was on Planning Commission. And I was concerned that we stepped away from CDBG once some of those really onerous strings went away. And so the concern I wrestle with is that these are your taxpayer dollars that are going to be spent somewhere. I don't like diverting your taxpayer dollars to other communities. The flip side is, it is abundantly clear in my mind, having heard directly from Marcia Fudge, that there will be a significant change to HUD, most likely reflecting the policies of previous administrations. So I'm deeply torn. I think part of it is, you know, acknowledging the proper role of government. We do want to ensure that all of the nonprofits, certainly those that presented today, receive the funding they need, because you all do phenomenal work in our community and we know it well. I mean, I look at Aaron White and I think about Tall Tales Ranch, and I mean, it's these organizations, the Crisis Center, it's phenomenal. And affordable housing is important too, because I want to see our veterans, our service members, those that work in service jobs, be able to live where they work. It's a traffic solution when people don't have to drive an hour to get to Douglas County, and they can actually live right here. That's a big deal for all of our citizens. So that's important. But how does the government play a role in those sorts of outcomes? I think I'm compelled by the notion that historically these have been private-public partnerships. It's not merely the government inserting itself where it doesn't belong, but engaging the private sector to help nonprofits and accomplish these important goals. So I guess for me, let me go back to staff and ask Tina, when we are being asked to sign that we will affirmatively advance fair housing, and Commissioner Thomas makes the point that we are only 4 municipalities in the entire country that has said no to those funds. For those that share our perspective and maybe have concerns about strings attached, but do sign that affirmatively, what on a practical level does that mean for the county, and how is that enforced by the federal government?
What that means for the county is that we would hope that we could go back to doing exactly what we did in the past that was so successful, and that had recognized the county as a model community. We were providing education through existing opportunities, through public meetings, and when we had training opportunities for advisory council members, for our applicants, and for our program managers, to help them understand what fair housing is. And it's actually a lot of very simple things that is surprisingly simple when you look at the previous rule with AFH and how complicated and onerous that was, because we felt like we were doing a good job, and so did HUD. However, the issue at that time was that we did not have enough guidance to truly understand more about what we could do to further fair housing as the Obama rules came into effect. It was quite concerning. So we would hope that we would still be able to continue to do the same things that we had, and which is providing access to services. In some cases, that is simply raising awareness with the people that apply for CDBG funds to ask the questions that sometimes they hadn't thought of. So it's a matter of, do you have people that speak other languages? That can you serve others that come in for assistance? in a variety of ways? Do you know what to do if someone comes in and they're not speaking the same language you are? Those are simple opportunities and simple things that we can do that HUD was very happy with. And we also continue to do our very best to bring in as much affordable housing as possible through the Housing Partnership and our other partnerships in the county. Other than that, we don't know what to expect from HUD. It's really up in the air, and I can see that there are many concerns, and there's no good answer right now.
Yeah. So if we are asked to complete a survey or respond to information about demographic breakdown and different types of housing product within Douglas County, if we don't meet the federal criteria that is set forth for us either now or in the future, how does that impact our CDBG grant funding process?
In the past, what we've seen HUD do is if they identify a discrepancy, let's say, for example, if they see that there's a large concentration of a particular race or ethnicity in one area of a community, and they don't believe that we evaluated or addressed that issue to see what can be done to help in that area, then they would ask us to take another look at it. That would be the first step.
Okay. Well, and that's where I really am challenged, because that to me is social engineering and looking at a community that is primarily suburban, which we are, and saying that that's not okay. And that you need to change your housing product and ensure that demographics fit federal desires in order for you to be approved for funding. And that kind of overreach seems improper from a role of government standpoint. I think Commissioner Teal raises a good point that in my mind is politicizing and weaponizing CDBG in a way that certainly we have not seen in this previous administration. I frankly, if we were still under the same rules, and currently we are, I would feel comfortable accepting these funds because they're taxpayer dollars, and I don't think that the social engineering would be occurring at the level we're sensing now. But that's where I'm at. Where is the board at in terms of process and timeline for today's purposes? We've heard that today is not the contract. The contract is in October. Today would be accepting a consolidated plan with the hope that we would hear more information perhaps between now and October. But we still have the option to pull out before that October contract deadline occurs. So where is the board at? Sure, Commissioner Teal.
Before I answer that pretty relatively direct question, Chair, I wonder if I could ask Ms. Dill, we heard one of my colleagues talk about 4 communities in the country that have not accepted CDBG. Are we counting Douglas County as one of those 4?
Yes, sir.
So, and help me out here, and by all means, please stop me if I get this wrong. So the 4 communities that have not accepted CDBG through America are Douglas County, I believe Westchester County, New York. We do know that the town of Castle Rock, as an entitled community, has chosen to not accept CDBG. And then we know that the town of Parker, Colorado, as an entitlement community, has chosen to not accept CDBG. So basically, 3/4 of the communities across America who have chosen to not accept CDBG are Douglas County and Douglas County communities.
It has definitely weighted in our direction, yes.
Well, I mean, when 2 of our largest municipalities within the county have chosen to waive off participating in CDBG, that informs my decision quite a bit. So again, Chair, to answer your question you just posed, I would ask that, we do stop the process here. We do make the choice to not adopt this resolution, to not proceed forward with CDBG this year. We do give it another cycle, another year to give it consideration. We do give it this period to allow the federal government to demonstrate what their actual intentions are. You have shared with us what has been stated verbally in Washington, D.C. We have seen what was done in the past. So, I mean, and then, you know, again, we talk about the need, we talk about what the requesting agencies that have come before us have asked for. First rule I learned in public policy budgeting is it's about priorities. If we're saying this is a priority to undo a policy that we have been participating in prior to the three of us coming on to this board, well, then isn't there an inverse priority of saying we still value these agencies? These projects that were brought before us were vetted by our staff, were scored by our staff, were allocated a possible funding based upon the value that they bring to our community. It's about priorities. If we feel strongly enough, and I do, I feel strongly enough to make these projects whole and carry through with these projects, but not making use of this funding mechanism. So again, Chair, to answer your question that you just posed, my vote today and what I would urge us to adopt as a board would be to make this our final step in CDBG, at least this year, at least in this cycle, and give the federal government time to show us the complete rulemaking, show us how these policies will be implemented from Washington.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. Commissioner Thomas?
So, Tina, if I say anything here that is not correct, I'm going to ask you at the end to correct me. But the county has not taken money since 2016.
That's correct.
Organizations and governments across the country have taken the money. Have any of them had the federal government come in and take over their localities?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that we're aware of. This is my concern, is that we have left a lot of our taxpayer dollars on the table because we were told that the federal government was going to come in and take us over. And that hasn't happened. And on top of that, we have spent $380,000 of our Miller money trying to backfill the CDBG money based on suggestions that Smith and Evie brought to us. And now we're out that $380,000 that wasn't used to help communities either. And I kind of feel like we keep being told the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming. And we were elected to govern. We are responsible for 380,000 people in our community. And we have people that have needs. And this CDBG program is a tool that has been provided by the federal government to help those communities. We have asked staff if we take this step today, and then the federal government does say, we are going to come in and take over your communities, and they have a concrete plan to do that, we have the ability to say no. But for 5 years, we've been told this is going to happen, and it hasn't happened. And we have done without these funds that can help our citizens. And I would suggest that we go ahead, we approve this today, we see what happens between now and October, and then we can see if there is more coming out of the Biden administration. But besides us here, everyone else is helping their vulnerable populations. And my neighbors across the street don't understand why we haven't helped our citizens. That's what they understand. That's what they know. And so I would encourage this board to take this step today, sign this plan, and have our staff to continue watching what is happening instead of being afraid of what might happen. We know what can happen with the dollars that we put out to help these people.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal, is that compelling at all in terms of perhaps moving forward with the consolidated plan today with the hope that we receive more information by October, and then being able to really rethink it if there is new information? I mean, right now we are under Trump administration rules, which have no strings. I mean, frankly, the federal government has put us in a rough position. We're in a vacuum trying to make a decision without all the information that we need. So I share that opinion with you. Is that persuasive?
It really, I don't find it, I mean, listen, there's not a lot to completely disagree with what Commissioner Thomas just mentioned. But actually, I don't find it compelling. And I mean, I'd like to share what's going on in my personal life. 2 weeks ago, our fan blower died on our furnace. The upshot of that was we need a new furnace. Okay, that's great. That sounds like a basic need for every residential home in Douglas County. I believe, to operate without a furnace, we would be out of zoning compliance, as a matter of fact. Well, that's great, but that was a $9,000 cost that my family had to incur. I don't know what everybody in the room makes, but $9,000 is a lot to me. And part of our financing structure was to refinance. We've held off for years. We get the calls saying you can get a better interest rate. We've held off doing it for years. But we did need to finance this home improvement. Over and over, I've been given the question of, how much are you going to go for? How much money are you going to take out? Are you going to take out the maximum? And I've been saying, well, no, I'm going to cover the need that I have right now finance-wise, because one, I don't want to incur a greater debt to a financial institution, and I need to live within my means. That's not free money. That's money that I still owe. And so I tell that story because I equate it to, Laura, what I hear from you. You're saying there's a need. Sure, there's a need, but it's a question then of priorities, of budgeting. There is not an exact equation, there is not a direct line between the need in our community versus this form of financing. Is it convenient? By all means. I'm familiar with the finances of at least one of the applicant agencies for these funds, and it frees up to allow them to receive this money, allows them to use available funds on other goals. And actually, we heard this as a part of my work with staff, is that bringing in CDBG funds is really great because it becomes an anchor for additional funding. It becomes an anchor for doing additional projects. Okay, well, that's fine. That's a need versus resources question we all deal with in our lives every day. Just like me and my wife dealing with refinancing in order to pay for a new furnace that we're going to need, if not for the AC, then at least once the wintertime comes and we need a furnace in our home. So I get the argument of wanting to do that immediate tie to say there's need and here's funds. That's a straight line of logic, but that's not necessarily so. We can fill these needs if we establish that it's a priority to wreck these projects. We can do that. That is a priority call we can make every year in our budgeting process. To address the concern about the wolf being at the door rhetoric that we've heard, it's okay. I mean, I get it, but when you're making a contract with the federal government has a tendency to be able to find you and enforce that contract. And it gives me no comfort that the federal government, quite frankly, has been unable to enforce or unwilling to enforce the letter of the law they put out, because that doesn't give me comfort, because that tells me that we're making laws and we're making federal administrative rules in the bureaucratic mechanism of our government that are just kind of empty words. but they're words nonetheless that can become very hard, very sharp, and very enforceable very quick. So I just don't get any comfort with the idea that, well, they haven't enforced it, so it'll be fine. We have many discussions on, what laws, rules, regulations do we have on the books that, what do we enforce and how do we enforce it? I mean, these are discussions we've had regularly since I've been sworn in since January. And so to move forward with a policy locally that's based on a policy that has not seen enforcement at the federal government, but it could, I don't get any comfort for. I mean, that doesn't help me feel better about moving forward. So again, I do appreciate, this is a great discussion. This is like one of the best discussions we've had since I've come onto the board back in January. If it helps at all, this is a very similar discussion that Castle Rock had on our town council back in 2015, though. And I still have the same, I cast a vote at the time to not move forward with CDBG funds. I'm still in that position, and were we to introduce a motion on this during this session, I'm afraid my motion would be to deny the resolution, or in the event of a motion to approve, I would still be a no.
If I could just reply to your comment that if we feel that these applications for this grant are a priority and we could fund them, there were only 8 applications for this money. And if we only fund those, then we are picking winners and losers. Because if we are going to decide we're going to use general fund dollars to fund nonprofits, I am not even going to venture to guess how many nonprofits are going to apply to us for funds, because that's not the purpose of our general fund dollars. So I just want to put that out there, that when Douglas County did not accept the CDBG money, I don't think anybody back there got money from the county, or did you get money from Castle Rock to backfill what you asked for? So that's not what happened. So I don't want to leave the impression that the county has enough money that we can just do this with general fund. In fact, Castle Rock, we're hearing, might be going to the ballot with 4 different questions in November for tax increases. So I think that we need to realize that we are in a time frame that when there is a tool available for us, that we need to look at it and consider it.
So I really do have to respond. Actually, Castle Rock did backfill the funds that were on those CDBG allocations. There is one applicant organization in this room that were on that list from Castle Rock. And Castle Rock did backfill.
Who was that, Commissioner Teal?
That would be the Crisis Center. That is true, Jennifer. Well, then I would merely say that the Crisis Center should go back and re-examine their books.
Okay, well, let's keep the discussion among the board here. Any additional discussion on this item?
I'm okay. This is a great discussion for me, but I'm ready to proceed.
Okay. Well, I will tell you where I'm landing is, I tend to be optimistic and hopeful, and I love and support the nonprofits in this community. I certainly know the difference between government funding and private sector funding for nonprofits. Our family has a private foundation, and I've seen the kind of good that can occur when private foundations, through their own will, are able to direct funds and resources to nonprofits of their choosing without the government being involved. And that's, I think the development directors in this room are aware of that, and they pursue funds from private foundations in a way that is hopefully productive. I think government can play a role, I think, in partnership with the private sector to advance these important causes. But again, I think I'm a commissioner of being a both and what I'm hearing from my board is we support these nonprofits in our community. We want to see them wholly and fully funded and funded well so that they can impact our citizens in a way that's productive. I'm also hearing our board say we anticipate changes to CDBG guidelines and that it will and potentially could be more onerous than we've seen in the past. And so if there is an opportunity for us to be able to make our nonprofits whole through the channels that Douglas County has historically operated under and not have strings, I think that's the best outcome. I think where I sit on the board of the Douglas County Community Foundation, and we've heard a lot of testimony about the foundation and their ability to raise funds and be an avenue for these nonprofits to receive directly from a foundation in our community. I think it's accurate to state that our investment through Philip S. Miller up to $100,000 a year has not borne the kind of fruit that we would have seen through accepting CDBG. And that's unfortunate. I will say that the board now is composed of the mayors from every municipality as well as C-suite executives and donors throughout the community. There's now a board of about 40, and they've made a commitment to raise about $1 million by the end of the year, which would exceed the CDBG funding that we're contemplating here. I don't want to make promises on behalf of the foundation, but that would be an avenue through which we could accomplish some of these laudable goals. I would agree with Commissioner Thomas that I don't think our general fund and our current rubric is set up to donate directly to nonprofits, and we would really open the floodgates. But that was the point of the foundation, was to raise those funds well. I would ask for those in the room that are opposed to CDBG, appreciate the criticism, but would also support your willingness to proactively work alongside our foundation and our private sector partners to raise those funds in a way that is appropriate for nonprofits in our community. And we certainly have not seen that yet from the Community Foundation. So I think for today's purposes, I will be in support of my fellow Commissioner Teal, and I will not approve this particular request today. So is there any additional discussion or comment on the agenda item today? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back for a motion.
Commissioner Thomas, would you be okay if I make the motion?
Please do. I'm looking for my sheet.
Chair, if it pleases the board, I'd like to make a motion to deny a resolution adopting the 2021 through 2025 consolidated plan.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and those opposed, same sign.
No.
And that passes to deny on a 2-1 vote. Thank you all for coming today. We'll now move to...
Commissioners,
yes,
before
sir.
we get too far from this issue, there were 2 exhibits submitted. I didn't want to interrupt the conversation to identify them. Submitted by Ms. Munson. They're labeled Exhibits 1 and 2 under this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Ingalls. With that, we will move to our second public hearing agenda item, item 3B, resolution vacating a portion of Block 31, Grandview Estates Subdivision, filing 1. We have Austin Brown presenting for staff.
Yeah, I'm okay. Like a break? Yeah.
Or do you need a break? Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Austin Brown, representing Planning Services. The request before you is for the easternmost portion of Block 31, Grandview Estates Road Vacation, project number SB 2020-065. This public right-of-way is currently owned by the Board of County Commissioners. Sharon Stockdale and Jim Vosberg are abutting landowners and the applicants. This is a request to vacate the easternmost portion of Block 31 in Grandview Estates. This section of Block 31 is not constructed and has not been developed for public access or roadway purposes. The area extends approximately 400 feet east and 450 feet west of 6th Street in Grandview Estates and ends at the property lines for the abutting lots. The abutting landowners have maintained this section of unused right-of-way and would like to acquire ownership by splitting the vacated portion of right-of-way equally between these two properties. The intent of Article 7B is to provide a review and approval process for various types of public road vacation requests. In this case, the easternmost portion of Block 31 was established by Plat, but has not been built or used for vehicle access. The road vacation process begins with the submittal of an application. Following a review period by referral agencies and courtesy notices to abutting landowners, public notice is given for a public hearing before the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners. During the referral period, Excel indicated that there could be a possible conflict with their natural gas distribution facilities located in the area. Excel requested that their facilities be shown on a locate map and that a utility easement for those facilities be reserved over the vacated area. A utility easement is being reserved through the vacation resolution. Public Works Engineering had no objection, but did require that the owners of each lot dedicate a right-of-way easement to the county to allow for a 45-foot radius cul-de-sac bulb to be constructed should the county desire to expand the bulb. Grandview Estates HOA indicated that they did not have an opinion for or against the proposed vacate. One member of the public contacted planning via email to find out additional information on the project. No public comments were received. The Planning Commission heard the request at its July 12th public hearing. One member of the public spoke in support of this application as it helps maintain the rural character of the subdivision. Commissioners asked a few clarifying questions and ultimately expressed support for the vacation as a good use of land that the county does not need or maintain. The Planning Commission found that the request met the approval standards for a road vacation and recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 with two conditions of approval. The first regarding the recordation of the right-of-way easements required for the cul-de-sac bulbs prior to road vacation resolution. The second was a standard condition regarding technical corrections. The area of right-of-way outlined in red is located within Grandview Estates, south of E470 and west of Chambers Road. The property is zoned estate residential. Immediately to the west of the right-of-way is a residential lot containing a previously vacated portion of Block 31. To the east of the right-of-way is the Chambers Reservoir owned by the Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority. The area to the north of the right-of-way is incorporated within the town of Parker. This aerial shows the portion of Block 31 outlined in red. 6th Street runs south from the middle of this portion of right-of-way between Lot 6, Block 1, and Lot 11, Block 2. The property abutting on the east is Chambers Reservoir owned by the Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority. The property abutting on the north is a Meets and Bounds property incorporated within the town of Parker. Block 31 was created with the original plat for Grandview Estates in 1957. As was typical at the time, Block 31 was created as half of a typical road section to allow for the possible construction of a full road should the property to the north be subdivided and developed for residential use. Such development did not occur. Other portions of Block 31 have been vacated at the request of adjacent property owners in the past. In 1998, a portion of right-of-way north of 4th Street was vacated. In 2007, portions of right-of-way between and on either side of 2nd and 3rd Streets were also vacated, along with a small portion to the east of 5th Street. A portion of a significant drainage way falls within a portion of Block 31 north of 5th Street. Public Works Engineering has indicated that it will not support vacation of this segment should it ever be requested. The only other portion of Block 31 that would remain in place following this vacation is a small segment to the east of 1st Street. Connections to the property to the north, which has now been annexed and zoned in the town of Parker, are provided at the ends of 2nd and 3rd Streets and are specifically limited to emergency, pedestrian, and equestrian access only. This slide shows the portions of Block 31 that were previously vacated. The orange area was vacated by the board in 1998. The blue areas were vacated by the board in 2007. A portion of Block 31 is encumbered by a drainage channel, as shown by the blue dash line. As previously mentioned, Public Works Engineering has indicated that it would not support vacation of this portion, as it is necessary for subdivision drainage purposes. The only other portion of Block 31 that would remain in place is the small segment to the east of 1st Street, which is shown in to the left of the blue section. This portion is also undeveloped for public access. This is a view looking north from 6th Street towards the portion of Block 31 to be vacated, north of the turnaround bulb. This is looking west from 6th Street, showing the 450 feet to be vacated. And this is looking east from 6th Street, showing the remaining 400 feet to be vacated. The exhibit shows the area of the right-of-way to be vacated, the roughly 1,918 square feet of the right-of-way that will be retained by Douglas County, and the acreage of the existing lots that will be dedicated to Douglas County in the form of a right-of-way easement to allow for a 45-foot radius cul-de-sac bulb to be constructed, should the county desire to grade in a larger bulb in the future. Ownership of the vacated portion of right-of-way will be assigned to the owners of the 2 abutting lots to the south via the vacation resolution. This is a list of the approval standards for a road vacation, and these items are discussed further in greater detail within the staff report. Staff has assessed the application in accordance with Article 7B of the subdivision resolution. Should the board find that the approval standards for the road vacation are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Concurrent with the recordation of the road vacation resolution, the right-of-way easements required for the cul-de-sac bulbs shall be recorded, and these were the easements that were approved during today's business meeting on the consent agenda. Secondly, prior to recordation of the road vacation resolution, all minor technical corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. The board shall evaluate the request, staff report, referral agency comments, and public testimony, and shall approve, conditionally approve, table for further study, or deny the request. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions on the staff report. Otherwise, both abutting landowners Sharon Stockdale and Jim Vosberg are here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Austin. Any questions for Austin?
I do have a question. Austin, thank you for that presentation. I don't know if you remember which road this was. I'm sure that Mr. Ingalls will remember. We had a similar request maybe a couple of years ago, and I don't remember what letter of the alphabet. Was it Cottonwood or something else? Which street did we do the same thing with?
Birch.
It was Birch. And are these both roads that go east-west?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, when we did that previous vacation, there were a lot of comments that if we close these off, we are limiting the availability of people to exit Grandview Estates to go east. So if we approve this, are there still other streets available that citizens in Grandview Estates can go east to exit their community? And Austin, I'll ask that to you, and if you don't know the answer, I bet Mr. Ingalls does.
Sure, I don't know if I can answer that question directly. I will say that Birch Avenue was a bit further south. The area to the east of this right-of-way to be vacated is the Arapahoe County Wastewater Authority owned property. And I believe Birch was further south past that property.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this to Mr. Ingalls because we heard differing conversations, if I remember this, that it does belong to the wastewater or water provider.
I believe it's Arapahoe County Wastewater Authority.
But they have allowed people to use that as access to get, I think, to chambers. So first of all, is there access to still enter, to exit Grandview Estates on foot to the east?
Before I answer that, could all the commissioners weigh in on this? I am your legal counsel. I am happy to provide you these facts if it benefits you. At the same time, if you'd rather hear from only other people, I understand. So I don't want to provide factual testimony unless it supports the board so that I can continue to behave as your attorney. I do have an answer, but that I want to leave it up to the board if you want me to testify in that fashion.
Commissioner Thomas.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is because he was the legal counsel when we had this particular item, and I think this was 2 years ago. And I don't think that Austin knows the answer to my question. I don't know if Kurt knows the answer to my question. I'm just wondering if this will be the last piece we're closing off, or there are other ways that people in Grandview Estates can go to the east. So whoever can answer that question.
Well, let me just ask. So, counsel, can you help us understand why we may not want to have you testify today?
I'm just trying to be respectful of my role for you. I don't generally testify for or against any request from the public. I do provide legal advice, and I limit my role to that. This is asking for factual information, which I'm happy to provide. I do know my neighborhood reasonably well, but that's not normally my role. So before I step down that path, I thought I'd give the board the opportunity to say yes or no to that request.
I see. So you feel like you might be being asked for factual information based upon your history there as a resident as opposed to your role as counsel. I understand. Commissioner Thomas, how would you like to proceed?
I'd just like to have an answer to the question. However we can get there is fine with me.
Okay. So maybe would staff have that information for Commissioner Thomas so we're not putting our attorney in an awkward position?
There are other folks from Grandview in the room, including Mr. Long, who pursued the last vacation that was granted by the board.
Okay. Well, normally we don't, unless perhaps it'd be staff. Go ahead, Austin.
Sure. And I think Chuck Smith with engineering might be able to better answer that, if that's okay.
Commissioners, does this work? Chuck Smith with engineering staff. There is other access to the south that gets you across over to Chambers. To the south side of the reservoir, there is access there.
Okay, do you happen to know what streets those are?
I'm not exactly sure, Commissioner. I think it's Dogwood, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal? No questions. Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions, but I'll reserve those following the applicant's presentation if the applicant would like to come up and share with us.
Leave it that way or do something else.
Is the applicant here?
I don't believe the applicant has presentations, but they're here to answer questions if you have any of them.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, maybe if is the applicant able to answer any of the questions that we raised prior with you associated with the, okay, great. If you want to come up and, hi. And if you could just state your
Sharon
name.
Stockdale. I live at 12992 North 6th Street in Parker, 80134.
Okay, thank you. And then do you have any insight in terms of Commissioner Thomas's question for us?
Yes.
Okay.
There is access on Dogwood to the east, and there's also access on, I believe, Cottonwood, that people can go east.
Okay. Okay.
You know, the reservoir is there.
Got it. Thank
So-
you.
And just to let you know, also, going to the west, Jim's property, you can see that, that's private property to the west. You have that right slide? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's not really showing it.
Okay.
That blue line right there.
It's a neighbor next to me.
And sir, if you want to testify, if you want to come up and just state your name and address for the record, please.
12991 North 6th Street, Jim Vosberg. And back in '07, they had that vacated, so you down my, way there next to my property is private property at the end of it, so you couldn't go anywhere anyway.
Okay.
And then you got the creek after that, so there's nothing there, but we're the last two in the neighborhood to have this vacated. And along 6th Street, on the backside of that is where the reservoir is. There is a trail around it, so you can get around it. And there's also a trail that leads for the kids to use to go over to the high school. So there is access that way.
But not from our property.
Okay,
No,
thank
not
you.
from our property, because it runs into the reservoir.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant?
That was my question, is that we heard before that kids needed to be able to get out on the east side to get to school. So you're saying they still have the ability to do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank
On
you.
other streets.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. I don't have any additional questions. With that, let's go ahead and open it up for any public comment on this particular agenda item. Is there any public comment on this? Yes, sir. If you can just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Frank Long. I live at 12230 North 6th Street. And I'm the one who did the vacate that Commissioner Thomas was referring to. There is access to the east on Cottonwood still, and there is also access from Dogwood with, as I told you, there is a cement walkway all the way over to Chambers. So that is still open there, and they have encouraged the kids to use that walkway because there's a controlled light there. They've also, the county put in a walkway at the top of 6th and Lincoln. They put a sidewalk to go down to also the stoplight at Chambers and Lincoln, controlled again, because they didn't want them crossing at Birch. That's why I did the vacate also, because Stonegate didn't want them, anybody in there. When I did the vacate, they wanted notification to all the abutting properties. And when I notified Stonegate, they said, well, nobody's supposed to be going in there anyway, so we don't have any opposition to you vacating that. So there is no access from Birch. And then as you go down now, I don't know about Elm, which is one of the streets that goes through also, but it goes to the reservoir, and there is a walkway around the reservoir all the way down to where this new vacate is going to connect in. That'll be the end of their, I guess, their property at the vacate on the east side, the new vacate. That will end at the trail from the walkway of the reservoir. Did that clear any questions up?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the comment. Thank you very much.
All right.
Great. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none in the audience. Is there any public comment online, Troy?
No online requests, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for further discussion and/or a motion.
If there is no other comment, I have a motion to approve a resolution vacating a portion of Block 31, Grandview Estates Subdivision, filing number 1, located in the northeast quarter of Section 7, Township 6 South, Range 66 west of the 6th PM, Douglas County, Colorado, with 2 conditions as presented.
And before we take a second on that, let me just confirm with the applicant that you are in agreement with the 2 conditions as presented? Okay, thank you very much.
Then I am happy to second.
Can I say the project file number?
Sorry, go ahead.
As presented, project file SB 2020-065.
Still a second.
Thank you both. So I've got a first and a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. And with that, we will move to item 3C, the Algra minor development.
Thank you, Commissioner Layden. Mike Pasica with representing Planning Services. And the project before you is project number SB 2020-026. It is the Algra minor development. And Kevin Archer is the applicant's representative who is here with us today. The request is a minor development to subdivide a 27.906 acre parcel into 2 lots and 1 tract for Lake Gulch Road right-of-way. Lot number 1 is proposed at roughly 8.5 acres in size. Lot number 2 is a little over 18 acres in size. Both complement the existing surrounding lots in the area. And tract A for future right-of-way dedication is 1.021 acres in size. The intent of the minor development process is to provide a streamlined review process for the creation of 10 or fewer single-family residential lots. The minor development plat process begins with the submittal of an application. Following a review period by referral agencies and the public hearings are held before the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. A neighbor to the east of the application initially had concerns with the proposed minor development and impacts to the character of the neighborhood and where structures would be built. Since the initial comments, the applicant has reduced that initial proposal from 3 lots to 2 and included building envelopes on the property to avoid steep slopes, leaving most of the site undisturbed. The neighbor now supports the proposed development. In addition, the Colorado Geological Survey expressed concerns with that initial 3-lot proposal and how steep slopes cover large portions of the site. The applicant responded by reducing the number of lots from 3 to 2, and as I just mentioned, included building envelopes on the property to avoid the steep slopes. The Planning Commission heard the proposal at its July 12, 2021 meeting and recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 with conditions recommended by staff. Take a look at the zoning of the property. It is outlined in red and it is zoned to rural residential. The site is located roughly a half-mile southeast of the intersection of Plum Creek Parkway and Lake Gulch Road. The town of Castle Rock borders the property to the north and to the west. There is agricultural one zoning to the east and rural residential to the east, south, and west. Take a closer view of the property, again outlined in red. It's located just east of Lake Gulch Road, and the surrounding areas are agricultural and single-family uses. And you can see the existing home in the lower right-hand corner of the property. The property was initially zoned from agricultural to residential in 1955. In 1971, the property was rezoned to the current rural residential zone district. The property is currently unplatted, and in 1996, a single-family residence was constructed on the site. Here is the exhibit that shows the proposed two-lot subdivision. I apologize for the Lot 1 label in just a little bit off there. Tract A is shown and will be dedicated to the county for future expansion of Lake Gulch Road, and Tract A runs the entire length of the proposed subdivision. Access to both lots will be from Lake Gulch Road via private common access easement. And in addition, you can see the two building envelopes that are proposed to be established to limit site disturbance and removal of existing vegetation. Quickly run through some pictures of the site. This is from Lake Gulch Road, looking north, generally towards the high point of the property. And again, this is from Lake Gulch Road. You can see the existing home generally in the middle of the picture. And this is from Lake Gulch Road, looking at the existing driveway into the property. And this is, again, from Lake Gulch Road, generally looking north-northeast towards the center of the property, generally towards the center of the property. And this is from Lake Gulch Road, looking directly west at the properties, just on the other side of the street. This slide lists the approval standards for a minor development final plat. Staff's assessment of the standards are discussed in more detail in your staff report. Staff has evaluated the minor development final plat in accordance with Article 6 of the Douglas County Subdivision Resolution. Should the board find that the approval standards for the minor development final plat are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Condition number 1, prior to recordation of the minor development final plat, the applicant shall provide a declaration of restrictive covenants, reserving the water beneath the property for the benefit of future landowners within the subdivision. Condition number 2, prior to recordation of the minor development final plat, the applicant shall pay cash in lieu of school land and park land dedication fees in the amount of $500 and $250 respectively. Condition number 3, prior to recordation of the minor development final plat, technical corrections to the plat exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 4, all commitments and promises, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 604.08 of the subdivision resolution sets forth the parameters for the board's decision on minor development final plat requests as shown on this slide. And that concludes staff's presentation. I can take questions at this time. Otherwise, the applicant is here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
I have no questions. Mike, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm I drive by this property at least once a week. What was the feedback received from neighbors, particularly the neighbors on the east side of Lake Gulch?
It was just concern with where a future home might be built, I think potentially on Lot 3, but that has since been removed. They were also concerned with 3 lots being maybe not in character with the neighborhood as opposed to the 2 lots that are now proposed.
Okay, but otherwise, with the elimination of Lot 3, feedback judged positive?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Teal. I have no additional questions if we want to move into the applicant's presentation.
Archer, Dave Archer and Associates, address 105 Wilcox, Castle Rock, Colorado. First of all, I want to thank staff for their help in navigating the process here. Originally, the purpose of the development was for Larry and Kathy Algra to divide the property into 3 lots, as Mike mentioned, for one for each of their sons and their families. As we moved through the process, the third lot, the one son had other things going on and decided not to build there. So we dropped the 3 lots down to 2 lots, which also helped satisfy the Colorado Geologic Survey that had concerns. And also, as Mike mentioned, the neighbor to the east satisfied some of his concerns, along with adding a building envelope at the existing residence. He was concerned about a new house on Lot 1 actually impeding his views. So the building envelope there satisfied that, and then we did get a letter back from him agreeing to those changes. The other issue, as mentioned, the Colorado Geologic Survey had issues with slope. So we did some further studies with Colorado Geoscience, investigating the building envelope areas for the new home, and was able to get their concerns satisfied as well. With that, the applicants agreed to the conditions outlined, the 4 conditions for approval, and Kyle and Rachel Agra are going to be the ones building on Lot 2, and we're all available to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Archer. Any questions for the applicant?
This is not a question, this is a thank you. So I don't know if one of you are the ones who went to your neighbor Ralph Tam, or if somebody else did. Did you? You can just raise your hand.
It was Larry, their father.
Your father? Yes. Okay. Tell him thank you, because when I started reading this packet and I saw this neighbor was upset, I thought, you guys just sat through this. We don't like to have commotion here. And when I kept reading it and I saw that Larry had gone across the street, it sounded like, and talked to Mr. Tam and worked it out, I thought, you know, in the olden days, I think that's how it used to happen all the time. So tell your dad thank you, we appreciate it. And so now we have a lot of happy people.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll still want to hear from the public, but that was one of the things that impressed me. Neighbors working with neighbors to achieve their goals. I mean, this is what I love about Douglas County, is this is what we do. Again, guys, I drive by that house, your dad's house, every week, once, at least once a week on Lake Gulch. And so I would have, this is so much easier knowing that neighbors are working with neighbors and not asking us to figure something out for them. So yeah, thank your dad for me. That's very much appreciated. And please, I do have a question. I apologize. Can I ask to review how many conditions on this?
4.
4? Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Those are my questions and my comments at this time, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal, and I would echo the board's sentiments that it's makes our job a lot easier when neighbors work together well, so thank you for that. So with that, well, let's move into public comment. Is there any public comment either in the gallery or online regarding this agenda item? I don't see any in the gallery. Troy, any online?
No online public comment.
Okay, thank you, Troy. So with that, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion.
Chair, if it pleases the board, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Algra minor development with 4 conditions as presented. I have that as project file SB 2020-026.
Second.
I've got a first and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passes. Congratulations. And with that, we will move into item 3D, use by special review. We've got Brett Thomas presenting for staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brett Thomas representing Planning Services. Project before you is 11901 East Palmer Divide Avenue, Fourth Amendment, project number US 2021-001, use by special review application for Dutch Heritage Gardens. The request is for approval of a use by special review for a greenhouse greater than 1 acre on a parcel of approximately 120 acres in size. The intent of the use by special review process is to provide for uses in specific zone districts that shall require public notice and hearing and the approval of the Board of County Commissioners, subject to conditions and safeguards as may be imposed by the board. The USR process begins with submittal of an application, following a review period by referral agencies and the public. There are public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners. Courtesy notices were sent to adjacent property owners during the public review period, and no responses were received from members of the public. At its public hearing on July 12, 2021, Planning Commission considered the applicant's request for approval of a USR. Commissioners asked the applicant questions regarding how the fair share dollar amount for paving was calculated and when the paving would occur. Staff indicated the contribution was calculated on a fair share percentage based on the traffic study prepared for the project, and that paving would begin later this year. A few other clarifying questions were asked, and the Planning Commission noted the economic benefits of the project for the region. No members of the public spoke at the hearing. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the USR request, subject to the 2 conditions proposed by staff, by a vote of 7-0. The site is located west of Delbert Road, approximately 1 mile north of its intersection with East Palmer Divide Avenue and the southeast corner of the county. This is an aerial of the property. The adjacent parcels are principally used for agricultural uses. In 1995, a building permit was issued for a greenhouse and storage warehouse, which were uses permitted by right. Another building permit was issued in 1997 for an approximately 130,000 square foot expansion to the existing greenhouse. Shortly after the building permit was issued for the expansion, the board approved an amendment to the zoning resolution requiring greenhouses larger than 1 acre in size go through a use by special review process. In 2011, the board approved a use by special review for a 123,120 square foot expansion to the greenhouse. Administrative amendments to the USR were approved in 2014, 2020, 2020, and 2021 to amend drainage, parking, storage, and other site features. The application proposes to construct approximately 285,000 square feet of additional greenhouse growing space, as well as an additional storage warehouse of approximately 9,500 square feet. The greenhouse expansion is proposed north and west of the existing greenhouse. The warehouse and storage expansion is proposed to the east of the existing warehouse. In addition to the site plan layout, the USR regulations require that various operational details and limitations be set forth on the plan exhibit. Dutch Heritage Gardens is a wholesale operation, except that the management plan allows for 2 open house events for the general public each year. The management plan also identifies hours of operation, number of employees, and the required parking, outside storage, and loading areas. In addition, the management plan notes various regulatory requirements related to drinking water and septic systems, compost, and hemp registration. Finally, the management plan notes the method of fire protection and anticipated traffic impacts associated with the USR. To address traffic impacts associated with the site, Public Works Engineering, in conjunction with comments from El Paso County, has requested the applicant pay $92,000 for its fair share contribution towards paving along a portion of Palmer Divide Avenue. This request is included as the first proposed condition of approval. This is a view looking northwest into the site from Delbert Road. The existing storage and warehouse is visible in the left of the frame, while the existing greenhouse is visible in the right half of the frame. This is a view looking southwest into the site from Delbert Road. This is the area of the proposed greenhouse expansion. Here are the 7 approval standards for use by special review. They're discussed in detail on pages 7 through 10 of the staff report. Staff has assessed the application in accordance with Section 21 of the zoning resolution. Should the board find that the approval standards for the use by special review are met, staff proposes the following conditions for inclusion in the motion. Condition number 1, prior to final approval of the record copy of the USR plan exhibit, the applicant shall pay $92,000 for its fair share contribution towards paving along a portion of the Palmer Divide Avenue. Condition number 2, prior to final approval of the record copy of the USR plan exhibit, any necessary technical corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 3, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and/or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 2109.09 of the zoning resolution sets forth the parameters for the board's determination on use by special review requests as noted on this slide. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions at this time. I believe the owner is on remotely. He is out of the country. The applicant representative had to run out for a family emergency, but the manager for Dutch Heritage is also here to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Brett. Just to clarify, you mentioned 2 conditions for approval. Is it 2 or is it 3?
Sorry, it is 3.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
So Brett, I do have one question. I got confused reading the packet. Is this property 720 acres or is it 120 acres?
It is 120 acres. I believe there is some discussion in the staff report about the original property was approximately 720 acres. Over time, I believe the Van Wingerden family had owned it. They sold off various portions of land over time. They did retain quite a bit of the water rights through a court decree.
Okay, so we are talking about a 120 acre site, and that's what they are asking to put another acre of greenhouse on this property.
Yes, it's, how much is it? My apologies. Yes, so the request is for a greenhouse greater than 1 acre in size. I can't find my actual number right now. I believe it's
285,000.
Okay. So that would be the size of the expansion.
Okay,
and
great.
It would be connected to the existing greenhouse.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, Brett. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
No questions.
Okay. And I'll reserve my questions following the applicant's presentation.
So Aaron actually lost feed. He's in Bulgaria on a family/business trip. So my name is Eric DeCamp. I'm the logistics manager of Dutch Heritage Gardens. My address is 18425 Table Rock Road, Colorado Springs. So the need for the expansion itself, we supply outdoor floral to King Super, Sam's Club, and Whole Foods. Over the years, the business has expanded to the point where we can no longer keep up with their demand with our current facility, hence the expansion. We actually, the last couple of years had been renting facilities as recently as this year from out of state in order to keep up with the demand. So that is the need for the expansion itself. I know as far as the expansion goes, we've already completed the stormwater pond improvement to maintain code. I apologize for some of my answers. The engineer had to leave. We currently have their grading permits for the expansion, and let's see. And we also have 200,000 gallons of water in a reservoir that the fire department has access to if need be for the expansion. I believe that's all that I have as far as the bullet points go that the engineer gave me before he left. So, but I have been working at Dutch Heritage for 7 years, so I know the intricacies of the business pretty well. So if you have any questions for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant?
Is it Mr. DeCamp?
Yes.
So my question is, you're open twice a year to the public.
Correct.
Memorial Day weekend, and when do I put on my calendar for the next event?
We are actually open the weekend after Thanksgiving. We're open for, it's a lot smaller, but it's a poinsettia open house. So everyone comes in, we put out a spread of hot cocoa and cookies for everybody. They walk around, take pictures in giant fields of poinsettias, and we enjoy both of our open houses pretty immensely. So.
Well, we always like to see successful businesses here in Douglas County, so when you expand, that must mean that you are successful. So thank you for finding a home in Douglas County.
Thank you.
I have no other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
Man, Commissioner Thomas, why'd you have to ask about the poinsettias? I mean, if my wife's watching, I know where I'm going to be that weekend, so, but that's fine, that's fine. Actually, actually 100%. I echo what Commissioner Thomas just said. Thank you for, bringing to and running a successful business here in Douglas County. We love to hear that business is expanding. And personally, I like voting yes to help businesses expand and do better.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. And I would echo my board sentiments. Thank you for being here and the contribution you make to our community and throughout the Front Range. It sounds like King Soopers is a large portion of your customer base. Can you help me just understand a little bit more about what you grow and who purchases from you guys?
So we grow primarily outdoor plants. So we do anything from small unfinished plants all the way up to giant finished pots. We do, I don't know exact numbers, but roughly 75% of the outdoor plants at King Soopers. So anytime you go to one of the King Soopers stores, when you're walking in the door, all those outdoor plants come from our facility. And then we do direct store deliveries to everything on the Front Range. So we have a fleet that delivers as far south as Pueblo and as far north as Fort Collins. And they have about 125 locations that we deliver to.
That's great. That's always a nice display in front of King Soopers. I know our families probably purchased our fair share of those. Do you guys do any sort of like hemp production or cannabis products?
We don't do cannabis. As far as I'm aware, I think cannabis is illegal in Douglas County. We have a small hemp division that we've been playing around with, along with pretty much every large greenhouse in the country has at least dabbled in it a little bit. I don't foresee that getting any larger than it currently is. And even in peak season, it takes up less than 10% of our facility.
So 10% of your facility is sort of hemp related?
As of right now, but then that specific amount of space might be speculative in my opinion. So, it definitely would be more than that, I would say.
Okay. So what kind of hemp products come out of that 10%? When you say dabble, what does that look like?
So what we do is we actually grow the starter plants for farmers all over the country. We will take a cutting off of a mother plant in the facility, and we will put it in a little, what we call them Ellie pots. They're pre-made dirt capsules. So we'll put the cutting in there, we'll root them out, and then once the plant is 4 or 5 inches tall, we ship them to the farmers. We shipped primarily, I want to say, to Kentucky this past year. So we'll just load up the baby plants on a semi, ship them to Kentucky, and then they'll plant them in their fields. So.
Got it. And probably for our edification in years since you asked, and maybe for those listening, if council could remind us of our marijuana regulations in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All forms of recreational or medicinal marijuana are prohibited in Douglas County. We don't allow any of the retail type sales or growth. Hemp has always been state regulated, so that's a separate issue and one that's always been outside the county's control.
Thank you, Mr. Ingalls. So maybe a quick question for staff that I might have. With a use by special review, do we create any precedent for future grow facilities in Douglas County by approving this request?
No, and with the use by special review application, the nice thing is zoning enforcement does go out once a year, do a site inspection, make sure that the site's operating in compliance with its management plan that's on the use by special review.
Great.
Exhibit.
Okay, thanks, Brett. I don't have any other questions. Any other discussion or comments or questions for the applicant? Okay, with that, I will bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion. I'm sorry, and did I do citizen comment on that? I know it's been a long afternoon. Maybe we'll open it up for citizen comment. I'm not seeing anybody in the gallery, but Troy, do we have anyone online?
None online, sir.
Okay, and anyone in the gallery that wanted to speak on this issue? Okay, so with that, let me bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion.
Did you ask about the 3 conditions?
Commissioner Thomas is helping me out a lot, which I appreciate. You may have answered this, but are you okay with the 3 conditions as presented?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have confirmation from the applicant that they're okay with the 3 conditions. Do we have a motion from the board?
Yes.
Unless I've probably forgotten one more thing. What else for today? My blood sugar is low.
I have a motion to approve the use by special review amendment for 11901 East Palmer Divide Avenue, 4th Amendment, with 3 conditions as presented, project file US 2021-001.
And I will second.
I've got a first and a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you, and thanks, Brett. With that, we will move to our final item for today's land use meeting and public hearing actions, which is a resolution supplementing the 2021 budget. We've got Kim Hirsch presenting for staff. Kim, thanks for sitting with us all afternoon.
Glad you did that Dutch Heritage. I love that place.
Yeah.
So we were back there. We buy them.
Nice. Thanksgiving or Memorial Day?
I've done the Memorial Day one, but there's another open house before the Memorial Day that you get to go a band and they do a lunch and there's hardly anybody in there and you get all your flowers early.
Wow.
Share with us that next time.
Check that one out.
Field trip.
Well, I'd like to formally present the second supplemental for fiscal year 2021 at this time. The total amount of the request for your consideration today is $23,937,088. More specifically, the supplemental request will be increasing appropriations for new revenues that have been received since the formal budget adoption, allow for unspent grant and project dollars to be carried forward into the current fiscal year, and appropriate fund balance for new initiatives that have arisen since January 1st. I'll quickly go through some of the larger requests by the funds, but we'll be happy to try to answer any of your questions more specifically at the end of the presentation. The general fund is $16,026,504. Of this amount, roughly $12 million is for new revenues, for which spending authority must be appropriated prior to the additional funds being spent. Another $1.7 million is being requested to carry forward unspent project or programs from the prior fiscal year. A few of the larger examples of these include $818,000 for technology and approximately $2 million for unspent Douglas County COVID support funding. The new initiative that is being presented today is $130,000 for the additional expenses related to the roof replacement at the Highlands Ranch Mansion. The Road and Bridge Fund, $867,528 of annual appropriations are being requested from assigned fund balance at this time. Several of the capital improvement projects did not progress as anticipated in 2020. Therefore, too little budget was appropriated at the time of the 2021 budget adoption. These additional funds will allow for the capital improvement projects outlined in the board's packet to continue without interruption in the current year. Additional revenues in the amount of $298,320 also need to be appropriated by the board at this time prior to the funds being spent. $140,400 of this amount is for the County Assisted Paving Program, which allows homeowners affected by Finn Avenue paving project to pay for the cost of the materials while the county incurs the cost of the paving. So it's a win-win for the homeowners and the county. And finally, another $158,000 of new revenues have been received from a developer to help offset the cost associated with the Palmer Divide Avenue to Thunder Road resurfacing project. Again, the Board of County Commissioners need to authorize the receipt of the revenues prior to the funds being spent. The Law Enforcement Authority Fund is requesting new appropriations totaling $6,866. The School Safety and Security Fund, $121,981 of assigned fund balance is being requested at this time. Of this, $110,900 will be used to help offset the additional purchase of supplies and equipment for the North Star Academy School Resource Officer that was approved by the board in August of 2020. And another $11,081 will go towards the Fourth Amendment with Taser International, which allows Douglas County Sheriff's Office to comply with Senate Bill 217. The Infrastructure Fund is requesting $156,222 of assigned fund balance, and this will go towards the Baldwin Gulch Capital Improvement Project. The Road Sales and Use Tax Fund, as with the Road and Bridge Fund, budget is requesting to move $619,291 from fund balance at this time. All dollars will go towards the US 85 Capital Improvement Project. In addition, $871,718 of new revenues have been received since budget adoption and need to be recognized. These funds have been received from Sterling Ranch to help offset the costs associated with the US 85 Improvement Project. The following funds are requesting to carry forward unspent project dollars related to multi-year projects. The Justice Center Sales and Use Tax Fund, $2,520,000. The two projects include the simulcast project and the dock expansion, and the Park Sales and Use Tax Fund, $36,475. The Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Fund, reprogramming of funds via various modifications that have come before the board throughout the year have resulted in a reduction of $152,300, and this decrease needs to be reflected in the change of the 2021 budget. In addition, the accounting department has finalized their year-end reconciliation on the unspent funds from the prior year, and as a result, $2,564,483 need to be carried forward into the current fiscal year. Again, the total request as presented today is $23,937,088. With this supplemental, the new amended budget for Douglas County will be $483,096,273. I've put all the fund summaries with the funds impacted in your backup, along with the explanations that were received by the departments explaining their request. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Kim, thank you so much for that presentation. Questions for Kim?
So Kim, we've heard that our revenues are up, I think, 8%. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact amount, but we're doing very well in the sales tax area, as well as we're anticipating a good increase in the expected property taxes for 2020 that will be collected in 2022.
So any of these increases right now, the $16 million to the general fund, are those a result of the increased sales and use tax that are coming in?
No.
They're not?
No.
Okay.
The revenues that are coming in is, we have, I think, I want to say 10 million, 12 million that will be received for the rent assistance in community development. And then some of the grants that we come in, they're reimbursable grants. So we have to receive the money before we, or we'll spend the money before we receive them. So a lot of the revenues that I'm requesting today are from grants. as well.
Thank you for that clarification. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
No, sir.
So, Kim, could you restate for us what our total budget is
With this,
with this supplemental?
it's going to be $483,096,273.
483, okay. And then I think Commissioner Thomas raised a good question, which is about that sales tax revenue. When will that be realized and captured for our review?
It's consistently realized as we go throughout the year. Our sales tax are up. We'll recognize those via the state deposit into the treasurer's office. We don't necessarily appropriate the additional expenditures associated with those to spend. We recognize the revenues, so are kind of in the fund balance.
Okay. Any sense where we're at percentage-wise over last year?
I don't have it, but we're doing very,
That's
very
what I
well.
thought.
I mean, stronger than expected, most definitely.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you, Kim. Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments for Kim?
I have none.
Okay. With that, let's move that into public comment. Any public comment on this final item for today, either in person or online? Not seeing anyone in person. Troy, do we have anybody online for this item?
We have no online attendees.
Okay, thank you, Troy. And with that, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for any further discussion and/or a motion.
Chair, if it pleases the board, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution supplementing the 2021 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated revenues and appropriate restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balances in the amount of $23,937,088.
I'll second that, and I have one comment to make after that.
Okay, I have a first and a second, and we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion. Commissioner Thomas.
Just to put on the record, this means that our budget is now $483,096,273.
You are correct.
Thank you. I have no other comments.
Great. So with that, we have a first and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passes. Kim, thank you very much. And that concludes all of our business for today's land use and public hearing item. We are now adjourned.